The first thing Braxton Zeller noticed when he stepped onto the campus of the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Institute was that gravity wasn't quite right. Not bad, just off. His boots felt heavier, but his shirt seemed lighter. The air even had a faint metallic taste, like licking a coin. Still, it was better than the last station he'd been assigned to, where the air filters choked out anything that resembled oxygen and the water tasted like warm broth. He adjusted the strap on his tool pack and glanced at the central tower. Glassy, tall, and curved in a spiral, it looked like someone had melted a skyscraper and let it harden mid-whirl. Around him, alien students of every shape and size scurried across the quad, some hovering, some striding, and one Braxton swore crawling upside down along the underside of a walkway. "Braxton Zeller," a voice chirped from somewhere lower than expected. He looked down to find a creature roughly the height of his knee. Pale blue, with leathery ridges flaring from either side of its head like wings and long arms that dragged slightly on the ground. "That's me," Braxton said, offering a hand. The creature blinked twice but didn't take it. "I am Tilu, your integration liaison. You are the first human maintenance engineer assigned here." "Glad to be here, Tilu," Braxton said, trying not to notice the gill-like slits along the creature's throat pulsing with each word. "Where am I starting?" Tilu turned and waddled forward, its long fingers tapping at a tablet. "You are stationed in Sector 8. Atmospheric sensors are malfunctioning. You will repair them. If you require rest, our infirmary, let's see the sensors first," Braxton cut in. "We'll worry about resting later." Tilla paused, turned slightly. "Human priorities are curious." Braxton smiled. "That's one word for it." The walk to Sector 8 took 20 minutes, mostly through long corridors lined with pipes and humming panels. Tilla stayed a pace ahead, speaking only to point out the occasional hazard: low beams, slippery tiles, or a species that discharged mild electricity when startled. When they arrived, Braxton found the sensor array embedded in the wall near a junction of 4 air ducts. A few panels were blinking red and one had gone completely dark. "Do you have schematics?" he asked. Tilla handed him a device. "You may access all systems here. Caution, the array has discharged twice." "Noted." Braxton rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He pulled off the external casing, carefully avoiding the exposed wires. After 15 minutes of probing, testing, and muttering to himself, he narrowed the issue down to a corroded junction inside the air duct. "I'll need to access the vent," he said. Tilla tilted his head. "That is not advised. The ventilation system is active." "Then shut it down." "I do not have that authority." Braxton sighed, then eyed the duct. It was wide enough to crawl through, barely. He'd done worse. He secured a harness to his belt and looped the line around a nearby anchor point. "Wait here," he said, then hoisted himself up. Inside the duct, it was dark, hot, and smelled like burnt plastic. He crawled forward, bracing his elbows and knees against the sides. The corroded junction was 10 feet in, just beyond a sharp corner. As he reached for his flashlight, the vent suddenly vibrated and a gust of hot air blasted through. Braxton flinched, lost his grip, and his knee slammed into the edge of a support beam. He grunted, then cursed. The pain was sharp, immediate, and made his stomach twist. He backed out slowly, dragging his leg as he descended. Tilu was waiting below. "You are injured." Braxton sat down hard against the wall. "Yeah, I think I hit the bone." Tilu scanned him with a small device. "There is swelling. Possible fracture. You must report to the infirmary immediately. I'll go after I fix the junction." "You cannot walk properly." "I can crawl." Tilla stared at him, blinking rapidly. "You wish to continue working?" Braxton wiped sweat from his brow. "I didn't come 12 light years to sit around because I bumped my knee. Help me brace it." Tilla hesitated, then retrieved a flexible splint from his pouch. With careful hands, he wrapped Braxton's knee and secured it. "You will make the injury worse. I'll deal with it." Braxton pulled himself back into the duct. This time, he moved slower, gritting his teeth with each shift. The pain was constant but manageable. He reached the junction, replaced the corroded component, and sealed the casing. By the time he crawled out, his shirt was soaked through and his hands trembled. Tilla was frozen in place. You have completed the repair? Yeah, Braxton said, teeth clenched. Now I'll go to the infirmary. Tilla followed silently. When they arrived, the medical technician in amphibious being named Sokka scanned Braxton's leg and confirmed a hairline fracture in the patella. You require immobilization and rest, Sokka said. Minimum recovery. 6 weeks. Braxton nodded. Understood. Tillu looked between the two of them. You knew it was fractured and still chose to continue? I wasn't sure it was fractured, Braxton said. But I knew it needed fixing. This is not rational behavior. Braxton chuckled. It's not about rational. It's about responsibility. Over the next 2 weeks, Braxton worked with a brace and a limp. He took on light duties calibration, diagnostics, software patches. Every time Tillis saw him, the alien observed silently as if trying to decode a puzzle. On the 15th day, Braxton was inspecting a coolant regulator when the brace slipped. He yelped and dropped his tablet. Tilla caught it before it hit the ground. You are not yet fully healed, Tilla said. I'm careful. You are not careful. You are persistent. Braxton looked at him. That a compliment? It is a confusion. Later that day, Tilla asked to observe human recovery protocols. Braxton showed him video logs from Earth athletes rehabbing injuries, workers returning to the job with limitations, soldiers training through pain. This is common behavior? Tillu asked. Not always smart. But yeah, it happens. Tilla studied the videos for hours. The next morning, he brought a report to his supervisor. Human resilience is not biological, he said. It is psychological. And possibly cultural. Braxton kept working even when the pain returned at night. He followed his therapy schedule, did his stretches, and cut his hours when the swelling flared. Eventually, the brace came off. One afternoon, 3 alien students were gathered near the diagnostic lab where Braxton ran simulations. He overheard them whispering. That is him, one said. The human who injured his leg and did not stop. I heard he refused sedatives. He must be defective. Braxton leaned through the doorway. I'm not defective. Just doing my job. The students scattered. Tillo entered a moment later. You have become a subject of study. Braxton shrugged. Let me know if they want interviews. At the end of the month, the director of the institute invited Braxton to speak at a seminar on interspecies resilience. He was hesitant but agreed. The audience was packed aliens in every color, shape, and configuration. He told them the truth. I didn't keep working because I like pain, he said, or because I thought I was tougher. I did it because it was my responsibility, because someone needed to do it. And because in my world, we've learned that sometimes you don't have the luxury of waiting until everything's perfect. Afterward, Tillu approached him. Your story will be archived in our cultural database, he said. Braxton chuckled. Hope I didn't mess up your averages. You complicated them. That is not a failure. It is. Insight. As Braxton packed up his tools that evening, he caught his reflection in the polished panel of the coolant chamber. He looked older than he had a month ago. Tired, but solid. When he turned to leave, Tilla was waiting at the door. You walk without limping now. Mostly. You will rest now? Braxton zipped up his pack. I'll rest when I'm done. Tilla blinked slowly. Of course you will. The first time Braxton got stuck in an elevator shaft with a 3-mouthed botanist from the ice moon of Vexer, it was before breakfast. It started with a simple maintenance call. A service drone had flagged inconsistent magnetic feedback in lift column C. Braxton, still favoring his left leg, had limped across 2 sectors with his tools clinking behind him, sipping a lukewarm nutrient pouch while scrolling through the schematic. It was supposed to be quick. In and out before the cafeteria swapped out breakfast cubes for the dense, flavorless lunch slabs. The elevator jammed while they were halfway up. The lights flickered, the walls groaned, and the cabin jolted to a jarring stop. Braxton's hand shot out to steady himself. His knee twinged, but held. The botanist, a translucent-skinned being named Quen, clutched its sample canister like it was a newborn. This is not optimal, Quen said. the center mouth pursing while the other two twitched in agitation. "We're stuck between levels," Braxton muttered. "Looks like the magnetic brake seized." Again, Quen's upper mandibles clicked. "I have time-sensitive specimens. Decomposition begins in 27 minutes if not properly chilled." Braxton popped open the floor hatch. "Then let's get you moving. You intend to climb out? With your prior impairment?" "Yeah," Braxton said, lowering himself into the shaft. "But I'm not doing chin-ups. There's a maintenance ladder. Is this behavior standard among your species?" He grunted as he descended. "Nah, a lot of us would have waited for rescue. I just hate being late." Quen knelt at the hatch and peered down. "You are aware that the shaft is not depressurized, correct?" "Yeah, I checked before dropping in. I'm stubborn, not suicidal." Braxton reached the faulty brake panel and pried it open. Sparks jumped as he disconnected the surge loop and rerouted the circuit through a bypass unit he jerry-rigged from a stim injector and a copper filament. Quen was silent for a long moment. "You constructed that module from medical waste?" Braxton looked up, sweat gathering at his hairline. "It works." "You want the lift moving or not?" The elevator lurched, then hummed back to life. Braxton climbed up, dusted his palms, and stretched his back. Quen stared at the bypass. "You are a maintenance engineer." "Yeah," Braxton said, wiping his hands. "Why?" "You repurpose disposable equipment into a functional circuit. Under time pressure. While injured." Braxton reached for his pouch. "You want a breakfast cube?" "Got one left." "No," Quen said. "I want to study your decision-making." By late afternoon, word had spread. Again. Braxton found his workbench surrounded by a semicircle of students, all various shades of curious. One floated slightly above the floor, another held a holographic recorder uncomfortably close to his temple. "All right," Braxton said, removing his gloves. "Let's get this over with." The tallest student, a furred being with long neck vertebrae, leaned forward. "Why did you not wait for authorized repair crews?" "Because I was already there." A reptilian student flicked its tail. "But the probability of injury was increased." Braxton shrugged. "So was the probability of ruining Quen's specimens. Pick your risk." A second-year hydrologist raised a limb. "Is it common for humans to accept physical deterioration to preserve another's work?" "Depends on the human," Braxton replied. "But yeah, we're kind of into that whole help-each-other-out thing." A pause. Then a smaller student, spherical and rotating gently, asked, "Do you experience pleasure from pain?" Braxton blinked. No, that's a different department." By evening, he was back in his quarters, rubbing a gel pack over his knee. The brace was off now, but the joint still ached after long days. He'd been given an exo support unit, but it was bulky and tripped the auto-closing doors. A message chimed. "Tilu, meet at Sector 11 Maintenance Dome. Bring minimal tools." Braxton sighed, stood, and grabbed his kit. Minimal meant no diagnostics drone, no structural scanner, and definitely no socket arm. Just a manual wrench and a roll of sealant tape. Sector 11 was quieter than the others, mostly used for rare atmosphere species. The dome was dim, lit by soft bioluminescent panels. Tilla was waiting near a curved console, standing beside a large tank of viscous green fluid. "You called?" Braxton asked. "Our oxygen regulators are misreading pressure values. We cannot adjust manually without causing chemical imbalance." Braxton crouched beside the panel. "This doesn't look like standard intake. What's mixed in?" "Trace elements of methane and argon, required by some of the aquatic delegates." "All right," Braxton said, opening the panel. "Let's not suffocate anyone today." As he worked, Tilu observed closely, eyes tracking every movement. After Braxton rewired the sensor hub and recalibrated the pressure gauge with a flick of his thumb, Tilla spoke. "You have not rested in 5 rotation cycles." Braxton didn't look up. "I sleep. Mostly." "No. I mean full rest. Without tasks. Without tools. I don't like wasting time." Tilla's fingers tapped the edge of the console. "Most beings prioritize recovery after trauma." "Well, I'm not most beings." "You are not." Braxton tightened the last bolt and stood, stretching his back. System stable. You'll need to run a flush cycle every 12 hours until the readings normalize. Tillu blinked slowly. You continue to function despite diminished biological equilibrium. Braxton gave a tired smile. That's one way to say my leg still hurts. Tillu hesitated, then opened a side drawer and handed over a small capsule. This contains a compound used by the Varethians. Accelerates joint recovery. It is not approved for your physiology, but initial simulations suggest compatibility. Braxton turned it over in his palm. You ran tests. I submitted your medical records to our non-invasive simulator. I did not ask permission. I will accept consequences. Braxton pocketed the capsule. I've had worse invasions. Thanks. Over the next 3 days, Tilla continued shadowing him, but with fewer questions. Instead, he started offering tools before Braxton asked, even anticipating small adjustments mid-repair. Once, during a calibration of the waste filtration pumps, Tilla handed over a tube of anti-corrosive paste before Braxton even realized he needed it. Starting to think you're learning, Braxton said. I am not permitted to perform repairs, Tilla replied. But I can assist. Efficiently. On the 6th day, Braxton was summoned to a review panel. He assumed it was about procedural violations. He'd bypassed 3 safety locks last week alone. Instead, he found himself facing 4 faculty members and a projection of his repair logs. Tilla was present, standing quietly near the back. You have logged over 70 hours of active maintenance since your injury, said the administrator, a tall creature with translucent limbs and a shifting chest cavity. This exceeds the recommended limit for your species. Braxton crossed his arms. Is that a reprimand? It is an observation. We are evaluating your methodology. Another faculty member, this one with a cascade of photosensitive tendrils, leaned forward. Your peers are displaying signs of behavioral mimicry. One Varethian declined hibernation to complete a multi-system diagnostic. A Lenthian stayed awake for 2 consecutive cycles after observing you work through pain. Braxton raised an eyebrow. You're saying I'm contagious? We are saying, the administrator replied, that your actions have introduced variables to our cultural models. Tillu stepped forward. His influence has broadened our understanding of functional perseverance. Braxton looked around. Is that good or bad? The tendrils waved slowly. Neither. It is unexpected. After the panel dismissed him, Braxton returned to his quarters and stared at the ceiling for a long time. He wasn't trying to start a movement. He just didn't like unfinished work. That night, Tillu dropped by with a container of food paste. You left the cafeteria before consuming anything. Braxton nodded. Didn't feel hungry. Your caloric expenditure exceeds intake. That is unsustainable. You sound like my old field medic. Tilla handed over the container. I have adjusted the nutrient profile to reflect your metabolic requirements. Braxton took it. You're not obligated to worry, you know? I am not worried, Tilla said. I am interested in cause and effect. As Braxton ate, Tilla sat quietly watching the lights of the city flicker through the window. Eventually, Tilla spoke again. Have you ever considered that your refusal to rest is a form of communication? Braxton looked up. What would I be saying? That responsibility justifies pain. That contribution outweighs comfort. That function is identity. Braxton didn't answer. Instead, he finished the last of the meal and set the container down. You think that's wrong? I think, Tilla said, it is different. And difference is worth studying. Outside, the dome lights dimmed to twilight. Inside, the two sat in silence, the quiet hum of the atmosphere filters the only sound between them. The first thing Braxton noticed when he entered the hydrothermal filtration chamber was the smell something between boiled spinach and burnt plastic. The second thing he noticed was the puddle forming under the control panel. Perfect, he mumbled, kneeling beside it. Of course it's leaking. The chamber was humid, the air thick with vapor that condensed on his eyelashes. He unlatched the access panel and scanned the interior with a handheld scope. A hairline crack along the pressure pipe was slowly weeping fluid onto the floor. The pipe was synthetic, but the adhesive bonding it to the valve coupling had degraded, probably from the microvibrations caused by the dome's compression cycles. He adjusted the scope and leaned in closer. "You are early. The problem persists," said a voice behind him. Braxton didn't turn. "Yeah, it's worse than the report made it sound." It was Zethra, an aquatic biped with a translucent chest cavity and four-fingered hands that flexed constantly, as though always preparing to catch something. Zethra was the environmental systems liaison for the lower dome sectors and, more importantly, not one to exaggerate. Braxton sat back on his heels. "You didn't mention the bonding failure. This whole section's going to need resealing." The diagnostics indicated a pressure loss, but not the source. The leak began less than half a cycle ago. Then it's spreading fast. Zethra crouched beside him, folding its limbs in a practiced motion. "You should requisition a replacement panel. This one was retrofitted before the last solstice." "It's overdue." Braxton pulled a roll of sealant mesh from his pack. "I'll patch it for now. Requisitioning anything this late in the rotation cycle means waiting 2 days." Zethra tilted its head. "The delay is safer than exposure to the compound inside the pipe." "Only if someone doesn't step in it first," Braxton said, already cutting the mesh to fit. "This stuff's corrosive to some of your species, right?" Zethra nodded. "Yes. It would cause dermal blistering for 4 of our aquatic delegates." "Then I'll take care of it now." As Braxton reached into the panel, his knee grazed the edge of the console. He sucked in a breath. Zethra's eyes narrowed. "You are still experiencing discomfort." Braxton didn't answer immediately. He secured the mesh over the crack and activated the sealant charge. It shimmered briefly before hardening. Zethra repeated, "You are in pain." "Some. It's manageable. You have not once requested an assistant or adjusted your schedules." "Because the work doesn't wait." Zethra was quiet for a moment. "You prioritize task completion above recovery." "This is not a criticism, only an observation." Braxton stood up, rubbing his knee once before straightening fully. "Trust me, I'd rather not feel like I'm walking on gravel every afternoon. But I've got protocols to update, a coolant relay to recalibrate, and a ventilation grid that's tripping alarms every other hour. Maybe when I've got a day without 5 things breaking at once, I'll think about resting." Zethra stood as well, its internal fluids shifting visibly with the motion. "Your persistence is being discussed." Braxton raised an eyebrow. "By who?" "Multiple departments. Behavior analysis, intercultural dynamics, even one of the bioethics instructors." "I'm not doing anything unethical." "They are not accusing. They are studying." "You've altered expectations." Braxton sighed and turned back to his tools. "That wasn't the goal. Intention is irrelevant to influence." He didn't respond. He was already focused on recalibrating the flow sensor. Zethra watched him for a while longer before stepping back. "I will log the repair as completed. You will rest after this." Braxton glanced at the time display on his wrist. "I'll grab something to eat first." Zethra's fingers flexed again. "Perhaps you will consider attending the interspecies adaptations seminar tomorrow. Your presence has been requested." Braxton gave a short nod. "I'll think about it." Later that evening, the cafeteria was nearly empty. The overhead lights had dimmed to simulate dusk, casting long shadows across the tables. Braxton sat at the far end, legs stretched, food tray untouched. Across from him, a tall, scale-covered student named Vurak watched him quietly. "You do not consume your sustenance," Vurak said. Braxton leaned back. "Lost my appetite." "You are depleted." "It is evident. I'm just tired." "You refuse rest, yet you do not recharge through nutrition. This is inefficient." Braxton picked at the corner of the tray. "You ever get so tired you can't even think about food?" "I enter torpor when depleted. It is involuntary. Wish I had that option." Vurak's nostrils flared slightly. "You are aware that your behavior distorts expectations of your species." Braxton looked up. "Yeah, I'm getting that a lot lately. Some students believe humans possess regenerative abilities beyond baseline biology. That's a dangerous assumption." "Agreed. Yet they mimic your actions." Braxton didn't answer. He pushed the tray aside and stood. "Where are you going now?" Vurak asked. "Back to the dorms. I've got a few system logs to review." Vurak rose as well. "You may not realize this, but your endurance has become a metric." Braxton paused. "A metric for what?" "For what is possible." The next morning, Braxton arrived at the seminar hall expecting to sit quietly in the back. He hadn't planned to speak, but the moment he stepped through the door, a dozen heads turned. Multiple species, some he hadn't seen before, were already seated. Tilla stood at the front with a small projection unit. "You came," Tilla said without surprise. "You didn't say I'd be on display." "You were not. You were a reference." Braxton hesitated, then sat near the front. The seminar began with a projection of work logs, physiological readings, and comparative recovery data across species. Tillu narrated dryly, without embellishment. Near the end, a student raised a tendril. "Why does he continue? What compels him?" Tillu turned to Braxton. He stood, feeling every joint protest. "I don't have a perfect answer," he said. "Some of it's habit, some of it's pressure, but most of it is just knowing that if I don't do it, someone else has to pick up the slack. That doesn't sit right with me." The student tilted. "But you suffer." "Yeah, sometimes. But I also fix things. That feels better than resting ever does." There was a long pause. Then another voice, lower and more gravelly. "Would you do it again?" Braxton nodded. "Every time." Tilla deactivated the projection. The room stayed silent for a moment longer, then slowly emptied. Afterward, Braxton found Tilla waiting near the corridor. "You didn't warn me," Braxton said. "You would have declined." "You're not wrong." Tilla's throat slits pulsed once. "Do you know what the students said afterward?" "Do I want to?" "They said he fixes things even when he breaks himself." "That is not logic. That is something else." Braxton adjusted the strap on his shoulder. "It's called stubborn." "No. It's called human." They walked in silence through the corridor, the walls humming gently with the rhythm of the station's life support. Outside, the dome lights brightened slightly, signaling the start of a new cycle. Braxton stopped at a junction. "I've got 3 minor faults to clear before midday. After that, I'll take the rest of the cycle off." Tilla blinked. "Voluntarily?" "Yeah. Just don't let anyone throw a parade. I will prevent celebrations." Braxton turned toward the maintenance wing. Tilla called after him, "Will you recover fully?" Braxton didn't stop walking. "I already did." And with that, he disappeared into the corridor, tools jangling softly at his side, the faint ache in his knee no louder than the hum of the systems he kept running.